It's time for another installment of the basics, and in sticking with the Star Trek card game, today we're going to talk about an underappreciated type of card in the game, and that is equipment cards. Because, let's face it, not everybody is big on equipment cards, even though they do have some interesting attributes that help the game along. So, let me show you what I'm talking about, okay? Now, I'm someone that's not been huge on equipment cards over the years while constructing decks. Yeah, my decks do have a few equipment cards here and there depending on the type of deck, but I've never really overloaded a deck with equipment cards. And that is both good and bad because equipment cards in this game can do a lot of things. For example, in terms of the Federation, or pretty much any race because it's open-ended, something like a tricorder. So the tricorder gives all of your engineer classification personnel the extra skill of science. The engineering kit gives all of your officer classification personnel the extra skill of engineer where present. Type 2 phaser, Federation and non-aligned use only. Each of your personnel are strength +2 where present and is cumulative. Now that is both good and bad when you're in away missions. The equipment helps you complete the necessary requirements on the mission to get the points. But when you have a lot of equipment cards start coming out, your opponent can get rid of them rather quickly depending on what's in his deck. That's why personally I like to keep equipment cards to a minimum in my deck, even though they do help. So cards like the IP scanner, so where present, nullifies interphasic plasma creatures, brain drain, and phased matter. So that gets rid of a few things on your way to completing missions. That can help you. Klingon weapons like the Dichtog and the Disruptor Rifle. Now these are for Klingon use only. The knife, each of your personnel present are strength +1. Klingon and non-aligned used for the Klingon Disruptor Rifle. Each of your personnel present is strength +3 but loses 1 diplomacy unless aboard your ship. So they do have detractors. You get a hell of a lot more strength, which is great for away team battles, but your lack of diplomacy, so you're on that planet now, you've beamed down to do that mission that needs diplomacy. Whoops, gone. Cards like what came out in the Rules of Acquisition expansion, Gold Pressed Latinum, so pretty much once per turn on a trading post or homeworld or at Quark's Bar, you can discard 2 of these Latinum cards and you can download an equipment card as long as it's not Latinum. So you're pretty much buying an equipment card. So while that is good, it adds an extra step and it might not always be in time because you're putting down equipments to buy an equipment pretty much. Cards like the Jem'Hadar pistol and the rifle, Dominion and non-aligned use only. Again, it adds to your strength. So if you're doing a lot of personnel battles on a planet and with your away team, it's helpful. Then you got equipment cards like this, the antimatter pod. So you leave it at the space mission where you've been, and what it does is it damages the next ship to stop here without 3 navigation. So if your opponent has a ship that comes along that doesn't have 3 navigation, that's an immediate turn clockwise and the ship is damaged. So if you have a cloak ship still in the area, you can move it over from the next baseline location and blast his ship to pieces. So it gives you an interesting dynamic. And finally, the Borg assimilation table holds 1 personnel. But if the table gets destroyed in any way, that personnel is killed. So, interesting card. I do use them in my Borg deck. I've never had to bring them out. While I can assimilate whoever I want using that deck, I pretty much prefer to destroy, as I mentioned before. So, this goes back to me saying you really have to think about your deck and what it's about before you start putting equipment cards in there, or make sure that your equipment cards are for that affiliation's use. Now, again, that all being said, because I've played this game for so many years and I've played against a wide variety of opponents, I've seen guys with a lot of equipment cards in their decks. I've seen guys like me that don't have a lot of equipment cards in their decks. It can go either way. There's no right or wrong amount of equipment cards to put in your deck. This goes back to what I was saying, is it depends on the type of deck you're building and what you want to do in the game with that deck. It's just another step on the journey to building a deck in the Star Trek card game. Have a great day, everybody.